Hello, welcome to episode 106 of the Inside Knowledge podcast. I'm Anna Mapson. Today I'm going to be talking about regular meals and regular eating for gut symptoms like bloating, constipation, excessive gas, sensitivity. These things are all better when you eat regularly, even if it doesn't feel better in the moment. So a lot of people I work with say that they're avoiding eating because every time they eat, it's kickstarting the problems. And I totally get that. Why would you want to replicate terrible experiences you've had where you were doubled over in pain or you couldn't sleep because of the gas moving around? It's so understandable to try to avoid those kind of situations. But what happens is when you have an erratic eating pattern, so you're not eating 3 steady meals a day, that you can then end up with more digestive issues. So we know that erratic eating and not eating enough food overall can cause symptoms that are very much like IBS. So let's get into that today. I wanted to start this episode just explaining where it's coming from. Most of the standard guidelines around IBS all focus on regular meals. So for example, like the NICE guidelines, like the NHS dietary guidelines, will all say that you need to eat regularly. And the reason that it's so important is that they've shown in studies that you're 3.9 times more likely to have IBS if you have an erratic eating pattern, and that was controlled for age, sex, various things that could also influence the outcome. And so we know that if you don't eat regularly, it can mess up your digestion. Now, why would that be? What would happen? So what happens is if we aren't eating on a regular schedule, then you can either, when you do eat, have a lot more fibre, a lot more protein, and put more stress on your digestive system. So you're kind of eating bigger meals when you do eat in order to hit your nutrition targets. Or you could just be severely under eating and not eating enough content, in which case your whole digestion kind of slows down, and then you can sometimes be left with what's called gastroparesis, when your stomach doesn't empty very quickly. So food sits really heavy and you can just feel so full and bloated, and that is really common when people haven't eaten enough for a really long time. A lot of people I work with will really struggle because their diet becomes so restricted, and so many foods that you can't eat, it just gets very boring as well. So that's another reason why sometimes people don't want to eat. You just can't be bothered. I spoke to somebody yesterday who said, if I could stop eating, I would. If I could just take a pill, it would make me full and give me everything I need. I'd be happy. I wouldn't be upset about not eating ever again. And that's really kind of sad, isn't it? There's a lot of joy that you can get from eating and enjoying food, but when so many things are off limits for you, it's really challenging. So if we know that skipping meals are not good for you and having long breaks between meals is also not good for you, then how can you kind of create those proper meal times and make regular eating more part of your day? So firstly, if you're going to have 3 meals a day, you're going to need to eat breakfast. And this is something a lot of people struggle with, I know. Partly in the morning you may feel very tired, especially if you haven't slept well, take a long time to wake up, maybe you're just not a morning person. But if you're not eating breakfast, one of 2 things is going to happen. You're either going to have to cram all your nutrition targets into lunch and dinner and into a shortened eating window, or you may get very hungry mid-morning. So I know that sometimes this happens as well, that you don't eat in the morning because you don't feel like it, go out the door to work, but then at work you suddenly get really starving, and then it's like, oh, should I just wait till lunch? Maybe I should just hang on. But you get really hungry, and that is a sign that your body is just lacking in nutrients. So when we're pushing it all the time, under eating to that extent can sometimes lead to more nausea. Now, I've worked with someone recently who said actually they noticed that the nausea that they had is actually better when they were eating. And that can be for one of 2 common reasons. One is that you're so hungry that you start to feel sick and your body is lacking in energy, and sometimes you will then either be sick or just feel really nauseous and don't feel like eating, weirdly. But actually that can be a sign that you are hungry And then the other time that people feel better when they're eating often is if they've got sort of gastritis, like burning. So that's like an irritation of the stomach lining. That can sometimes be better when there's food in there, because then it gets the stomach acid going, kind of gets all the juices going, and it just takes a bit of the pressure off your stomach. So those two situations are maybe relevant to you. Now, if you do also find that you're going for long periods of time, either by skipping breakfast or skipping lunch, then what also can happen is you get a blood sugar dip, and that can make you feel more anxious. And we know that people with IBS often have higher risk of anxiety or low mood and kind of depression because of this really strong gut-brain connection. There's so many instances where people who feel their emotions in their gut, feel really heavy and sick and slow, or feel all jittery and bubbly, and those two things can sometimes be an indication of how you're feeling, like in your mind and your mental state. But if we eat more regularly, then you're giving your body a bit of blood sugar. If you eat more regularly, then you're giving your body the nutrition to help it feel safe. So I'm not saying that undereating or not going for long periods of time can cause anxiety, but if you're prone to anxiety, which many of you may well be, you sometimes will feel worse when you don't eat. And so by having these 3 regular meals in place, we can kind of support that gut-brain connection, allow the body to feel safe and feel well nourished, which can be challenging when you don't feel good. So that's another reason for eating a little bit more regularly. And then the other thing about not eating or skipping meals is that you're likely to be low in key nutrients. And in multiple studies, people who have IBS who are avoiding multiple foods can be low in nutrients like iron, calcium, zinc, B vitamins, sometimes magnesium. And this is mostly due to just avoiding the foods that contain those kind of nutrients and not eating enough. And if we're low in some of those nutrients, that can have a physiological impact on your body. Okay, so that's a little summary about why you're going to need to eat 3 regular meals, but let's talk about how to actually make that a bit easier for you. I'm sure you've read everywhere that you should be eating 3 meals, but actually, how do you put that in practice? What do you actually do? So the first thing I would do is to start thinking about what you need to change in order to make that happen. For some people, it will be preparing a breakfast the night before, making something that you think you might be able to tolerate first thing in the morning and putting it in place. So it might be as basic as, if you're going to have porridge, say, you get the saucepan, you put it on the stove, obviously not turning it on, but get it ready. You get the oats and you just put them on the sideboard, or you're going to get your bowl and put it on the table. Like, prepare it, have the least amount of barriers in the way in order to make it happen, because in the morning you won't feel like it. If you felt like it, you would have done it before. We need to try and make it as easy as possible to make what you want to happen. So that's one thing, is prepare and thinking about it. If lunch is your big problem and you just never feel like eating, or you're too busy, then again, you're going to need to think the night before, when I wake up in the morning, what am I going to prepare for lunch to take into work the next day? And it might be something as simple as some crackers and some cheese and a little yogurt, something that you can manage, or maybe it's a banana. So things that you think, okay, I could probably do that. It might not be the optimum lunch that I would dream of, but at least it's something to keep me going, and it's a start. And if you already have something like that, then maybe we can try and upgrade it. Like, is there a way you could take some soup in a flask? Or maybe you can take something and reheat it at work if you have access to a kitchen. So these kind of things are difficult to change because they are habits now, and changing habits takes a long time. It takes repetition, and you need to keep going if you want to see change like really embed itself in your life. It's very difficult to make changes to habits that you have already. That would be the first thing, is actually preparing, and maybe even taking a step back before that, is that you need to have the food in the house. If you're not someone who normally buys oats and yet you want to be having porridge for breakfast, then you're going to need to actually buy it in and have it ready. So Making sure that the food is available is probably the first step. Second is preparing that specific meal that you want to include. If you wake up in the morning and you just never feel like eating, there are a couple of things that we can think about to try and encourage you to eat. So the first one is like to properly try and wake up, and that is very difficult when it's dark and cold outside, but you want to try, if you can, to see the daylight. Sometimes it won't be light when you wake up, especially in the winter in the UK, but if it is and it's a summer, like try and open the curtains, see the daylight, because that bit of daylight hitting your eyes allows you to stop the production of melatonin, which is your sleep hormone. And melatonin is actually an appetite suppressant, so we don't tend to feel super hungry when we're half asleep. So you need to try and wake your body up. The other thing you can be doing is movement. So either like a little bit of movement in your kitchen at home, going for a short walk, something that's going to try and wake your body up. You don't need to eat your breakfast as soon as you wake up. It could be okay to make it and take it to work, and maybe eat your breakfast as soon as you sit down at your desk to eat there instead of eating at home. Maybe you do it after the school run if you're taking your kids to school. There are lots of ways. It doesn't have to be wake up and suddenly eat, but the more you can do to try and wake your body up and then gradually inch it forward. So if you're currently not eating until 11, maybe bring it forward to 10:30. Can you eat at 10 a.m? Small incremental changes with the goal of eating breakfast earlier are really going to help. So having 3 meals a day does require you to have space in between those meals. You can't eat your breakfast at 11:30 and then expect to eat lunch at lunchtime, because you just won't be hungry, right? And then you're going to try and eat your dinner later as well. So we need to allow time in between these meals so that you're actually hungry for them. And if you haven't ever thought about your appetite, or you have lost touch and connection with how being hungry feels, which is also something I hear from quite a few people. They sort of forgotten what hunger is because they've avoided food for so long. Maybe you have thought about foods that you want to eat, but if you feel nervous about what it's going to do to you, then you think, oh, actually, I'm not that hungry, I probably won't eat, or I could probably get away with not eating until dinner time, so I won't have a snack now, or I'll just skip out my lunch today. That's really common in people I work with, I would say, and can lead to you forgetting what the sensation of hunger is like. You might notice it in other ways, like perhaps you feel a bit dizzy or lightheaded, you're getting headaches, you feel very tired all the time. These can be other signs that your body is just a bit hungry and perhaps you need something else to eat. But maybe you've forgotten about the rumbling tummy, or that sensation, you're interpreting it in a different way. So those are some ideas about how to incorporate more food into your diet. The 3 regular meals should be a balance, ideally, of carbs, fats and proteins to give you, those are the key macronutrients that we need to keep us healthy. And a balance of those might look like, a piece of chicken or fish with some carbs like some potatoes or rice and a couple of vegetables. That would be a great dinner, straight lunch, something like that. But if you're looking for more quick foods that you can do quickly in the morning, so breakfast, a really good breakfast, if you can tolerate it, is oats, because it's high in soluble fibre, and that is very good for people with constipation and diarrhea, because it's binding and it just dissolves in water and will create a nice gel that creates a soft but well-formed stool. Oats are brilliant, and you can put lots of things into them to increase the protein and the fats and make it more balanced. If you just eat oats, you may find you get hungry pretty quickly. If you can handle a bit of dairy, then whey protein powder is a good addition to your oats. You can add it in at the end of cooking the porridge up, and that gives you a bit more protein and will boost the nutrients and keep you fuller for longer. Just give you some building blocks for things like your muscles, your skin health, your hair, nails, everything. We need protein for our physical structures, But also things like digestive enzymes, like even the small parts of us, we need a lot of protein every day, and adding to it in the morning is a great way to balance out your protein intake. Now, a lot of people tend to go a little bit crazy with fibre. If you're having oats in the morning, maybe you're chucking in some chia seeds, you're putting in some fruit, you're like adding loads of things to it to make it interesting. That's great, but you may be overwhelming your body with too much fibre in the morning, and actually spreading it out through the day could be a better way of making sure you hit your fibre targets, but just in a slower, more considered way. Maybe some of the fruit could be pushed down to lunchtime, and you could have like your banana at lunchtime instead. Other things you can have for breakfast would be eggs and toast, or you can make it into like French toast or eggy bread, that kind of thing. You could have eggs any way you like them, scrambled, fried, boiled, whatever. That's all fine. I would say go for at least 2 or even 3 eggs to make sure that you're getting sufficient protein. 1 egg and 1 piece of toast isn't normally enough, but if that's all you can do, then that is a start. Now, even if you have a piece of toast with peanut butter on it, again, you don't need to start off with masses if you don't eat breakfast at all. Even just something like a smoothie might be better for some people, although the cold liquid also doesn't do it for a lot of people. So you've got to work with your own tastes, preferences, and all of that. Okay, so then lunch, depending on where you are, if you are working from home, again, so if you haven't had eggs for breakfast, something like eggs and toast is a great lunch. You can put a little bit of vegetables like spinach and mushrooms on the side, or you could add tomato, or you can make a little omelette with those. Then also instant noodles are very quick, and you can boil them up, add in some peas, some edamame beans, or any kind of vegetables or flavours to make it tasty. So those are some kind of quick things you can try. If you are needing to take a lunch with you and you go out to work, then things like last night's leftovers, really easy way of just making more for dinner and having it for lunch the next day. Trying to make life as easy as possible for yourselves. If the goal is to eat 3 meals a day and you're not currently doing that, then any step up you can get towards that is going to be helpful. I just wanted to finish off talking about snacks, because that's something people worry about, particularly people who have SIBO. So in SIBO, a lot of the issues may stem from a damaged migrating motor complex. This is like your body's internal housekeeper that cleans up the small intestine in between meals. So when you've stopped eating, your body will get to work cleaning up debris and dead cells, etc. Damage to this process is one of the issues that could be a root cause of small intestine bacterial overgrowth. Where every time you eat, that process stops. So some people with SIBO will really fixate on having long periods of time without eating in order to heal from SIBO. If you are not eating enough calories, not enough fibre, not enough protein, you will find it hard to recover from SIBO, because you're not nourishing your immune system, which has to fight off the SIBO, okay? You're not going to do this in isolation in a petri dish. Your body needs nutrients in order to beat the SIBO. So yes, the migrating motor complex is important. And yes, it is good to have some gaps in between meals, but I wouldn't obsess about it. I would focus more on making sure you've got the right ingredients, the right nutrients to get yourself feeling strong, to really nourish your body so that you can beat it yourself. Okay, so rather than thinking just about kill SIBO with antibiotics and, don't worry about diet, you need the diet to be supporting you and making you feel strong. And you might be dealing with it for many months or even years, and so we don't want to be under eating all of that time, because then you can end up being very low in key nutrients. So if you need to snack in between meals, then you should. If you're hungry, you should eat more in between meals. If you're always hungry, then I would take a little look at your meal content and see if you can eat more at each meal. Maybe you need to have 4 small meals or 5 small meals even, which is sometimes recommended for people who have reflux or gastroparesis, that's slow stomach emptying. Smaller balanced meals could be better than 3 big meals. That's a slightly different case, which is not classic IBS. But if you're hungry in between meals, again, don't obsess about this migrating motor complex. The majority of the time, what you do is more important than every now and again eating because you're hungry. If you need to eat before bed, then do that. You need to have something that's going to keep you going. Otherwise, you could be impacting your sleep. And we know when you don't sleep as well, you can feel more anxious, feel more pain, and just your gut can be a lot more sensitive. So sleep is 100% more important than protecting this migrating motor complex by avoiding having a snack. So when you're hungry, first of all, see if you can eat more in each meal. Secondly, just have a snack if you need it. To summarise this episode, I want you to finish just rounding up what I've said. 3 meals a day is very important for people who've got IBS. It keeps the gut going, it keeps it moving. It may feel more scary because every time you eat, you're triggering the symptoms. However, if you don't eat enough, you can also end up in a place where undereating has caused more IBS type symptoms like bloating, like slow stomach emptying, like excessive gas and bacterial overgrowth. Okay, so you don't want to get to the point where you are undereating all the time. If the fear of food is really stopping you from eating, then check out the last episode that I did, 104, which was about reducing food fear and some tips on that. Also check out the episode 59 when I talked a bit about sleep and what you can do to try and get better sleep, because sometimes that will also help your appetite and help you eat a bit more. So other things that are really going to be helpful is episode 2 about chewing your food, mindful eating, because that sometimes takes the pressure off your digestion when you are able to digest the food a little bit better. I hope it's been helpful. If you've got any topics that you'd like me to talk about, then please share them and let me know. You can get hold of me on Instagram, where I am goodnessme_nutrition, or you can just send me an email. The show notes have got my email address. Okay, I will leave it there for this week. Thanks very much for listening to this episode of the Inside Knowledge podcast. Better digestion for everyone.